Betrayal cuts deepest when it comes from the person who once swore to love you forever. I never thought I'd see the day when the man I married, the man I trusted with my whole heart, would stand in a courtroom and demand half of everything I had, including money he never earned and an inheritance he had no right to. My name is Elena Crawford, and this is the story of how my husband Nathaniel, or Nate, as everyone called him, tried to strip me of everything I'd worked for. What he didn't know was that I had one last card hidden up my sleeve. And when I played it, it destroyed him completely. If you had met Nate the way I first did, you might have fallen for him too. He was tall, handsome, with the kind of easy confidence that made people listen when he spoke. We met at a charity gala in Nashville, one of those events where everyone's dressed to impress, champagne is flowing, and you feel like you're stepping into a different world. He was charming that night, asking me thoughtful questions about my work, laughing at my jokes like they were the funniest thing he'd ever heard. I was 29, working long hours in my career, and hadn't exactly had the best luck in dating. So when Nate walked into my life, it felt like fate. We dated, and things moved quickly. He showered me with attention, surprise dinners, flowers, little love notes left in my bag. He made me feel seen, adored, and most of all, safe. And isn't that what we're all searching for in love? Within a year, he proposed. I can still remember the sparkle of the diamond ring under the candlelight, the way he promised me forever. I said yes, and for a while, I believed that was the smartest decision I'd ever made. Our marriage started out beautifully. Or at least that's what I told myself. We bought a home together, decorated it with furniture we picked as a team, and planned our future like any other couple in love. But cracks have a way of forming in the foundation when you're not paying attention. Nate had a taste for the finer things in life. He wanted the newest car, the best clothes, the most expensive vacations. At first, I thought it was harmless. We both worked, we could afford a little indulgence, right? But soon, his spending habits became reckless. I noticed credit card bills stacking higher, unexplained withdrawals, and then came the excuses. It's an investment, he'd say. Or, don't worry, I'll pay it off next month. Except next month never came. Still, I loved him. And love makes you forgive things you probably shouldn't. I worked harder, covered more of the bills, and told myself it was just a phase. Then came the inheritance. My grandmother, God rest her soul, left me nearly $2.8 million when she passed. She'd been a strong woman, the kind who believed in independence and security. She'd worked her whole life to make sure her family would be taken care of. When I received that money, I knew immediately what I wanted to do: protect it. My grandmother had always been clear about one thing, Elena: never let anyone take advantage of what you've earned or been given. And so, long before Nate and I were even married, I had signed a prenuptial agreement. It was ironclad, drafted by some of the best lawyers in Nashville. That inheritance, along with my premarital assets, was mine alone. But here's the thing: I never told Nate all the details. He knew about the inheritance, of course. You can't exactly hide millions of dollars. But the prenup? That little detail slipped through the cracks of his memory, or maybe he never thought it would matter. Years went on, and Nate's spending only got worse. He switched jobs constantly, never satisfied, always convinced he was destined for something greater. Meanwhile, I was the steady one, paying mortgages, covering debts, keeping us afloat. The love that had once blinded me slowly turned into resentment. I began to see him for what he really was: a man who loved the lifestyle I provided more than he loved me. The final straw came when I found out about the debt. Nearly $87,000 in credit card bills and personal loans, all in his name, but dragging both of us down. I confronted him, furious, and he had the audacity to tell me that I should help him out because we're married, and what's mine is yours. That was the day I decided I was done. Filing for divorce was terrifying, but also liberating. I remember sitting in my lawyer's office, my hands trembling as I signed the papers. I wanted out. I wanted peace. I wanted my life back. But Nate? Oh, he wasn't going down quietly. Almost immediately, his lawyer filed motions demanding half of everything I owned. The house. My savings. And yes, even my grandmother's inheritance. When I first read those documents, I felt sick. Half of everything. Was he out of his mind? He hadn't earned a dime of that inheritance. He hadn't contributed to my premarital assets. And the gall of him, to try to take what was never his to begin with. But in his mind, he was entitled. He strutted into every meeting with his attorney like he had already won. And to be fair, Nate had always been persuasive. He knew how to play the victim, how to spin a story to make himself look like the wounded party. His friends rallied around him, whispering that I was cold, that I was greedy, that I was abandoning a man in his time of need. And Nate? He leaned into that narrative like it was his golden ticket. The day finally came when we stood in court. I'll never forget walking into that room, the heavy oak doors, the echo of footsteps on marble floors, the rows of benches filled with people waiting for their turn before the judge. And there he was. Nate, dressed to the nines in an expensive suit I'm fairly certain he'd bought on credit, smirking like the cat that ate the canary. He sat next to his lawyer, who looked equally smug, and they whispered to each other like they already had the victory in their hands. I took my seat beside my attorney, my heart pounding. I knew what was coming. Nate was about to lay out his demands, half of everything, right there in front of the judge. And he did. His lawyer stood tall, voice dripping with confidence, and declared that Nathaniel Crawford was entitled to 50% of the marital assets, including my inheritance. I could feel the eyes of the courtroom on me, sympathy in some faces, judgment in others. And Nate? He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, that smug smile plastered on his face. He thought he had won. But what he didn't know was that I had been waiting for this very moment. The judge adjusted his glasses, glanced at the paperwork Nate's lawyer had filed, and asked me if I had a response. My attorney stood, calm as ever, and said 6 words that silenced the entire courtroom. Your Honor, there is a prenuptial agreement. I swear I saw Nate's smirk falter for just a split second, but he recovered quickly, leaning toward his lawyer with an expression that screamed, she's bluffing. But I wasn't bluffing. My attorney reached into his briefcase and pulled out a thick, neatly bound document. The judge flipped through the pages, nodding slowly, his eyebrows raising as he read. The silence in that courtroom was deafening. Finally, the judge looked up. According to this agreement, signed and notarized before your marriage, Mrs. Crawford's inheritance and all premarital assets are fully protected. They are not subject to division. The words landed like a thunderclap. Nate's face turned crimson. His lawyer stammered, trying to object, but the judge shut him down immediately. Mr. Crawford, the judge continued, his tone sharp now, you signed this document. You acknowledged its terms. Did you not understand what you were signing at the time? Nate's voice cracked as he tried to answer. I didn't think it would matter. She said she loved me. We were supposed to share everything. The judge's gavel struck once, silencing him. Love does not nullify a legal contract. This prenup is valid and enforceable. And just like that, the tables turned. I will never forget the look on his face, the dawning horror, the disbelief, the rage. It was like watching a mask shatter into pieces. He slammed his hands on the table, his voice rising. This is ridiculous. She can't just keep everything while I walk away with nothing. I gave her the best years of my life. People in the courtroom gasped. His lawyer put a hand on his arm, hissing at him to sit down, but Nate wasn't listening. She's been manipulating me from the start, he shouted. That money should have been ours. I deserve it. She owes me. The judge's patience wore thin. Mr. Crawford, one more outburst like that and I will hold you in contempt. But Nate couldn't stop himself. He ranted about sacrifices he never made, about debts that were somehow my fault, about how he had been tricked into signing a prenup. The judge finally ordered a bailiff to escort him out to cool off. I sat there quietly, hands folded in my lap, while the man I had once loved humiliated himself in front of everyone. When order was restored, the judge issued his decision. All premarital assets and the inheritance remain with Mrs. Crawford. The marital home, which was primarily funded by her, will remain hers as well. Mr. Crawford is solely responsible for his personal debts, totaling $87,000. Spousal support is denied, given his demonstrated pattern of financial irresponsibility. The gavel struck. Case closed. It was over. I had walked into that courtroom terrified of losing everything. I walked out with my inheritance protected, my home secure, and Nate left drowning in the debts he had created. Word spread quickly. Nashville isn't a huge city, and stories like this travel fast. Nate's friends, the ones who had whispered that I was greedy, started to distance themselves. Nobody wanted to be associated with a man who had tried and failed to scam his own wife out of her grandmother's legacy. His reputation crumbled. Business contacts stopped returning his calls. The few friends he had left grew tired of his bitterness and self-pity. Meanwhile, the debts caught up with him. With no claim to my money and no steady job, he filed for bankruptcy within a year. The fancy car? Repossessed. The designer clothes? Sold off. The man who once strutted into rooms with a smug smile now slouched in the shadows, a shell of who he used to be. As for me, I won't pretend it was easy. Divorce is never easy, even when you know it's the right choice. There were nights I cried myself to sleep, mornings I woke up feeling hollow. I had loved him once. That kind of love doesn't disappear without leaving scars. But slowly, I began to heal. I poured my energy into something new, a foundation in my grandmother's name, dedicated to helping women secure financial independence. I wanted to make sure no one else would ever feel as trapped or as vulnerable as I had. Every time I signed a grant or attended an event for the foundation, I felt my grandmother's presence beside me. I knew she'd be proud that her gift had turned into something bigger than both of us. Months later, I ran into Nate by chance. He looked different. The sharp suit was gone, replaced with a wrinkled shirt. His hair was unkempt, his eyes hollow. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. He tried to sneer, to muster up that old arrogance, but it fell flat. "Hope you're happy," he spat. "You ruined my life." I looked him in the eye and said, "No, Nate. You ruined your own life. I just stopped letting you ruin mine." And then I walked away, leaving him standing there, a bitter man clinging to the ashes of his own choices. Betrayal is a wound that takes time to heal, but justice, true justice, has a way of stitching it closed. Nate thought he could take everything from me, but instead, he lost everything himself. If there's one lesson I've learned, it's this: protect yourself. Protect your future. Because love is beautiful, but love without respect, without trust, without responsibility, it's nothing more than a pretty mask hiding a rotting core. I walked away from that courtroom not just with my inheritance intact, but with my dignity restored. And that, more than money, is priceless. My name is Elena Crawford. And that was my revenge.